a very good morning to you. Tune in to BBC Radio Leicester with Ady and Jo. The time now is 11 minutes to 8. Well, a little bit later on this morning, Ben Jackson will be joined by Riaz Khan from Leicester. Riaz will be talking about his experience of looking after his mum and dad in later life. But Riaz isn't the only one who stepped in to look after his old parents. Natasha Crywald is 18 and is a student who lives in Leicester, who before starting university this year was the primary carer for her mum, who can't walk. Natasha joins us now. Morning, Natasha.
Morning.
Tell me about when you first started caring for your mum.
Everything was very sudden. I was 8 years old. It literally changed overnight. 1 minute I was getting dressed by my mum in the morning. She was helping me put my socks and shoes on, and the next day I was having to dress her. It was that quick of a turnaround. Yeah, it was really quite difficult.
How did you cope?
I don't really know. People ask me that question a lot, and it's just a case of you don't know how you're going to cope until you're in that situation. And you love your mum. Everyone has love for their parents, and it's like you can't think of not helping. It's not an option in my eyes. Like, I would have always helped.
How, you said that 8 years old, I mean, which is a really young age, isn't it? How did this affect your childhood?
Massively. I don't have as many nice childhood memories as many other people have. Like, we didn't really go on holiday as a family. We never went on days out, and even if we did, my mum couldn't join in. And so it was pretty tough growing up. And at school, everyone would bully me. They would say I was different because I was late for school, or I didn't have the nicest clothes, or I was doing things for my mum that they thought I shouldn't have been. So it was quite difficult, but I think it's just made me stronger as an adult, really. So looking back, it's not a bad thing.
Did you ever get any help from anybody else?
I did, but it took, I think, 2 years, maybe 3. I was 11 by the time that I was signed up to a young carer service, because I went very much under the radar. Nobody knew, and so basically until I was 11, no support at all. It was just myself, me and my mum, and my sister sometimes, and we would just deal with things together.
This baffles me, Natasha. I'm trying to get my head around the fact that at 8 years old you were having to take on these responsibilities, and I don't understand how that can be the case. How someone along the line, a doctor or someone from social services couldn't see that this was not right. What was it like?
It took until one time when my sister had a parents' evening, and it took until they saw that my mum was physically disabled at a parents' evening for anyone to even notice. Like, it's because when you're a family, you keep things close-knit. You don't want to talk about it, and especially if you're already being bullied at school for things, you don't want to have to speak out because you think people will judge you. That's essentially what happens. But yeah, I kind of agree. I think there should be a lot more put in place instantly from the point that somebody does become a carer, because it massively changes people's lives.
Did you ever just lie about what you were doing?
Pretty much. I think every single time that someone said, "Oh, what do you do at home?" it was kind of just I sometimes hoover, and like in reality I was helping my mum to get dressed, I was helping my mum to cook and clean, and like all these things that an 8-year-old wouldn't really have imagined ever doing. So yeah, I think I did lie a bit.
How big of a problem is this? Are there other people, this morning, 8-year-olds that are caring for their parents? How much of a problem is this?
Hundreds of thousands, and I think it's one of those dark figures. I don't think anyone actually knows, because considering that it took 3 years for me to be noticed, how many other kids is it going to take 3, 5, 10 years for them to ever say anything? I ran a support group in my school for 12 students who were young carers. I did this all by myself, and I think the youngest that anyone ever was that had said that when they started caring out, started caring about 5 years old. Like, it was that young, and it's siblings, parents, grandparents, it could be anybody. So it is a massive issue.
You were saying then about, kids are cruel anyway, aren't they? Best of times, bullying. But did it put a strain on yours and your mum's relationship?
I don't think it ever did, no. I think it only ever made it stronger. I think if you've got to a stage where I was dressing my mum every morning, like, I think though kids would bully and say, "Oh, you've had to see your mum shirtless." Yeah, so have you a million times. It's just like, this is the reality of human nature. This is how it is. This is how it's supposed to be. Like, and I don't think it's ever put a strain on my relationship with my mum. If anything, it's made our relationship a lot stronger.
You're doing something even more incredible now as well. You're trying to help others, aren't you?
100%. Yeah, I always like to help others. I've written a book called The Carer's Companion. It's a support guide for young carers, because obviously a support worker, they work 9 to 5. If you need them out of that time, there's nothing they can do. And so it's just a 24/7 support guide with activities, motivation, and a lot of caring for yourself as well, because I think that's a massive thing as a carer you forget. You need to have a focus on yourself and instead of just others.
Tell me about some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about young carers.
I think people think that we do a lot less than we actually do. I think people think, oh, they're 8 years old, they're not going to know how to cook, they're not going to know how to clean. But in reality, it's such a quick turnaround that you have to learn these things. And at 8 years old, it's a pretty tough job to learn how to do. I mean, people can spend 9 months preparing to be a parent, and at the end of it, everyone says, oh, I wasn't ready. So imagine how difficult it is if in a second a child becomes a carer.
How can people get hold of your book?
I have a link on the Rotary Club. I'm pretty sure that I can probably share it with you guys. But at the minute, we've only got 3,000. Well, we've given out 3,000 copies, and it's very much a case of we need the funding. I didn't want it to have to be a resource that kids paid for, because I know in that position I couldn't afford it, and I don't think that help is something that we should ever have to physically pay out of pocket for, especially when we can't afford to do so. So at the minute, we're looking for people to sponsor the books, people to help fund it, and then we're going to hopefully promote it further across more than just our county.
So if people listening to this, because what an incredible story, you know, what a woman you are, but I mean, if people want to support you, if people are thinking, yeah, do you know what, I was a young carer, I'm in a position now where I can help sponsor the book or help do something, how do people get in touch with you?
Honestly, probably through the radio. The Rotary Club massively helped me with getting the book out, and that was after a BBC Radio Northampton interview, and they contacted the radio and they said, hey, look, I want to help. And I instantaneously jumped on it and was like, yes, please, thank you. And because of that, we changed 3,000 young carers' lives, and the response from the book has been massive. People have said it's helped their lives like endlessly. So
finally, Natasha, what would your advice be? Someone listening today that knows a young carer, or perhaps is a young carer themselves, what would your advice be to them this morning?
Just to keep going. Honestly, things get better. As you get older, you will learn more things. If at that moment you feel like you can't do something, definitely speak out about it, because I wish I had done sooner.
Natasha, thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. Let us know how you get on with the book as well, won't you? 3,000 lives you've already changed. Then we'll be talking to Riaz Khan about his struggle to look after his parents. It's also part of a documentary on Inside Out on BBC One tonight called Who's Looking After Mum and Dad. That's on at 7:30.
It's 4 minutes to 8.